Do you know that feeling when you're trying to put together a puzzle and none of the pieces seem to fit? You keep trying over and over, only to get more frustrated. Then, someone else comes along, takes one quick look, and instantly finds the right piece. And suddenly, everything starts making sense. You think to yourself, why didn't I ask for help earlier? Now imagine that, but on a much larger scale. Sometimes life feels like that impossible puzzle. We deal with problems, fears, and uncertainties, trying to fix everything on our own. We use all our strength, but nothing seems to work. That's when we ask ourselves, is there anyone who can help me with this? And the answer is right in front of us, God. Let me tell you a story. There was a man named Paul going through a tough time. He had lost his job, was dealing with problems at home, and felt like no one understood him. Every night, he prayed but felt as if God wasn't listening. Then one day, exhausted from fighting alone, he said, God, I don't know what else to do. I'm giving it all to you. The next day, he felt a peace he couldn't explain. Little by little, things started to fall into place. Doors opened, he found a new job, and his life began to take a new direction. Paul realized that letting go of the struggle and trusting God changed everything. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to show you what happens when you stop carrying everything on your own shoulders and give your challenges to God. Stay with me until the end of this video, because I'll share practical tips, inspiring stories, and truths that can completely transform how you live. Are you ready to start trusting for real? Let's dive in. But first, just check to make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Here, I'll be bringing you more content like this in the upcoming videos, designed to help you reflect and draw closer to God, discovering the best He has for your life and your journey with Him. The transformative power of faith in God. Picture yourself standing in front of a massive mountain, one so tall it seems to touch the sky. You look at it and feel a heavy weight in your heart. It feels impossible to cross, impossible to climb, impossible to move. It's as if that mountain is there just to remind you how small and powerless you feel. That mountain could represent a problem in your life, a situation that seems unmanageable, a pain that paralyzes you, or a goal that feels so far away you've already thought about giving up. Now, pause for a moment and think about something very small, almost invisible, a mustard seed. It's so tiny that if you hold it between your fingers, you could drop it without even noticing. Jesus used this simple image to teach something powerful. He said, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. You might be asking, but how is that possible? How can something so small have such a big impact? It's because faith isn't about what you can do, it's about who you choose to trust. It's not the size of your faith that matters, but the power of the God in whom you believe. Faith is like an invisible thread connecting you to the Creator of the universe. And through that thread, the impossible starts to become possible. Let me share a story to illustrate this. Imagine you're in a boat in the middle of a storm. The waves are enormous, the wind is pushing you from side to side, and the sky is so dark you can barely see. Fear takes over. You grip the edges of the boat tightly, convinced it's going to sink. But then you remember, God is with me. Even though you're afraid, you take a deep breath, close your eyes, and decide to trust. Slowly, you notice the waves start to calm, the wind settles, and the sky begins to clear. That's faith in action. It doesn't mean the storm disappears instantly, but even in the chaos, you feel God's presence, guiding and sustaining you. Faith isn't about avoiding life's storms. It's about walking through them, knowing you're not alone. That massive mountain you face could be a situation that seems unsolvable, a battle with illness, a dream that feels unreachable, or even a broken relationship that seems impossible to restore. But when you choose to place your trust in God, something shifts. The mountain might not disappear immediately, but you discover that God gives you the strength to climb it, the wisdom to find a way around it, or sometimes He removes the obstacle in a way you never imagined. Faith, even small, grows over time. It's like that mustard seed that, when planted, grows into a large and sturdy tree. It grows as you trust more, experience God's care, and see how He works in your life. Every prayer, every moment you choose not to give up, is like watering that seed. Now, let me ask you, What's the mountain you're facing today? Maybe it's something no one else knows about, something you keep inside that makes you feel small. Or maybe it's a problem everyone around you can see, and they keep asking, what are you going to do? Whatever your mountain is, remember this: God is greater. He doesn't need you to have gigantic faith to act. All he asks is that you trust, even with simple, childlike faith. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by your circumstances, remember that small seed. Remember that the God who created the heavens and the earth is by your side, ready to guide you and turn the impossible into reality. Because in the end, it's not about the size of your faith, it's about the size of the God you choose to believe in. Take a moment now, close your eyes, and ask yourself, do I believe that God can move my mountain? If your answer is yes, even with a tiny thread of hope, that's enough. God can transform your life in ways you can't yet imagine. And it all starts with one simple decision: to trust. Faith in difficult times. Picture yourself on a deserted road in the middle of a moonless night. The sky is so cloudy that you can't see a single star. Everything around you is darkness. The wind blows cold, and every sound seems to amplify your fear. You don't know where to go. You can't see the path, and despair begins to creep in. This scene is how many of us feel during life's hardest moments: lost, uncertain, and without direction. Now, imagine you find a small flashlight in your hand. It doesn't light up the entire path ahead but shows you one step at a time, just enough to move forward. That flashlight is faith. It doesn't solve all your problems at once, but it illuminates the next step you need to take, even if you can't yet see the whole journey. Faith isn't about making everything disappear instantly. It's not a magic formula. It's a quiet, invisible force that propels you forward, even when you can't yet see the light at the end of the tunnel. Faith is about seeing beyond chaos. Faith is also about seeing beyond the chaos. In the darkest moments, it reminds us that God is at work, even when we can't see the results yet. It's like a seed planted deep in the soil, hidden in the darkness but growing steadily toward the light. You might not notice the progress right away, but something is happening beneath the surface. Difficult moments are often like tests that challenge our trust in God. They make us ask, is God really with me? And it's in these moments that faith shines its brightest, not because the circumstances change immediately, but because faith transforms how we face them. I want to hear your story. Share in the comments an experience where God's promises became real for you or someone close to you. Let's strengthen our faith together and inspire others with moments of hope and transformation. What is the dark night you're facing today? Maybe it's a loss, financial worries, illness, or a relationship that seems beyond repair. Faith doesn't promise that the journey will be easy, but it does guarantee that you're not walking it alone. Every time you choose to trust, even when you can't see what's ahead, it's like switching on a tiny flashlight to take one more step toward the light. In the darkest moments, remember this: faith isn't about pretending the problems don't exist. It's about being certain that God is at work, even when everything seems still. It's believing He's preparing something greater than you can imagine. So, close your eyes for a moment and ask yourself, am I ready to take the next step? It doesn't matter how small it is. Trust that God is holding your hand, guiding you through the darkness. One step at a time, you'll get there. Living with faith in everyday life. Now, think about a regular, ordinary day. You wake up to your alarm clock, rub your eyes, get out of bed, and start your usual routine: brushing your teeth, making coffee, checking your messages. Then you head off to face the day. It seems simple, doesn't it? But here's what we often forget: God is present in those everyday moments too. He's not just the God of big crises or deep prayers. He's the God of details, of small decisions, and of our routines. Let me share a story to illustrate this. There was a young woman named Clara. She had a strong faith but, like many of us, believed she only needed to activate that faith during desperate times or when making big decisions. The rest of the time, she relied on her own strength. One day, Clara started to notice how her life was filled with small stresses: traffic on the way to work, late meetings, a lack of patience with the people around her. Everything seemed to pile up. She felt overwhelmed, even though there wasn't one big problem causing it. Then, during a morning devotional, she read a verse that deeply moved her. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3 verse 5. Clara decided to try something new. She began giving every part of her day to God, even the small things. Each morning, before leaving the house, she would say a simple prayer: Lord, guide my steps today. Show me how to live with more peace and love. At first, it felt so small that she doubted it would make any difference. But over time, she noticed changes. In traffic, instead of getting annoyed, she would pray, "Thank you, God, for giving me extra time to reflect." During stressful meetings, she would pause mentally to ask for wisdom. Lord, help me respond with calmness and clarity. By the end of the day, Clara began to notice that not only was she handling situations better, but she also saw God in the little details. It felt as if he was whispering, "I'm here, even in the small things." What can we learn from Clara? Living with faith in everyday life means recognizing that God isn't just there for the dramatic moments. He's walking with you while you make lunch, send emails, or work through a challenging task. Faith transforms those simple moments. You begin to see that even the smallest challenges can be faced with greater ease when you trust that God is in control. Here's something else. Living with daily faith helps you find beauty where there used to be monotony. That hot cup of coffee in the morning becomes more than just coffee. It feels like a gift. A coworker's smile reminds you of how God uses people to bring joy into your life. Even the difficulties you face take on new meaning, becoming opportunities to trust God more. Living with faith also gives you a fresh perspective on the future. Instead of worrying so much about what's ahead, you learn to live one day at a time, knowing that God is already taking care of tomorrow. Just like Jesus said, "Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself." Each day has enough trouble of its own. Matthew 6 verse 34. A simple challenge for you. Take a moment and think. How would your day look if you started to include faith in the little things? Maybe you'd feel calmer in traffic, more patient during a tough conversation, or even more grateful for the small blessings God places in your path. At its core, living with faith in everyday life is about building a constant relationship with God. It's not just about praying when you need something big, it's about inviting Him to be part of your routine. Because He cares about every detail of your life, from the smallest to the greatest. Tomorrow morning, before checking your phone or diving into the busyness of your day, take a moment to say a simple prayer. God, I place this day in your hands. Help me live with faith and see your presence in the little moments. You'll be surprised at how much it can transform your routine. Trusting in God's plan. Trusting in God's plan can be challenging, especially in moments of uncertainty. How often do we find ourselves in situations where everything feels out of control? In those times, the question arises, does God really have a plan for this? The answer is a resounding yes. God always has a plan, but trusting Him requires something from us: faith. Let's be honest, trusting in God's plan isn't easy because we often don't understand what He's doing. It's like trying to put together a puzzle without having the picture on the box. You have the pieces, but you can't see how they fit. That's where faith comes in. We don't need to see the full picture to trust that God knows exactly what He's building in our lives. A final reminder. Hey, I noticed you haven't left your like yet. It's super important for YouTube to keep sharing this kind of content, and it helps us continue to support you. So go ahead and hit that like button. It's free and makes all the difference. Trusting in God's plan. Trusting in God's plan also means letting go of the fear of making mistakes. So often we find ourselves stuck, paralyzed by the fear of taking the wrong step or straying off the path. But here's the good news: God is greater than our mistakes. He can redirect anything, turning even our missteps into part of His plan. Instead of fighting against what you can't control, choose to trust. This isn't about passive surrender. It's about actively resting in the knowledge that God is in control. It's about handing over your fears, dreams, and doubts to Him, believing that He's working on something far greater than you can imagine. Remember, God doesn't promise a path without obstacles, but He does promise to be with you every step of the way. He doesn't promise that you'll understand everything, but He guarantees that it will all make sense in the end. So, what's that one area of your life you need to surrender to Him today? What part are you still trying to control on your own? Take a deep breath and say, Lord, I trust your plan. Even if you don't see the outcome yet, know that God is working behind the scenes, aligning every detail for your good. Hold on to this promise, because those who trust in God never walk alone. Now, let me ask you, are you ready to trust His plan even when you don't fully understand it? If so, keep moving forward in faith, because God is already preparing something incredible for you. Imagine navigating a river. Picture yourself in a boat on a wide river. At first, the water is calm and peaceful. You feel in control, holding the oars and deciding which direction to go. But suddenly, the waters grow rough. The current gets stronger, and you realize you can't steer the boat as easily as before. What do? Do you fight against the current, or do you let go and trust the river to carry you, believing it knows where it's taking you? This image perfectly reflects what it means to trust God's plan. Often, we want to be the captain of our lives, deciding every turn and destination, as if we have all the answers. But the truth is, there are things we can't predict or control. It's in these moments that God calls us to let go of the oars and trust. Story about trust. Let me tell you about Anna. Anna was a determined woman who meticulously planned every detail of her life. She believed that with enough effort, she could achieve anything she wanted. But then, something unexpected happened. After years of hard work and dedication, she lost the job she loved. Her plans crumbled. Suddenly, she found herself in rough waters, unsure of where to turn. In the first few days, Anna fought hard. She sent out resumes, called contacts, and made plans to fix the situation. But despite all her efforts, nothing worked. Anxiety began to consume her, and one night, crying in her room, she said, God, I don't know what else to do. I'm tired of fighting. If you have a plan, I want to trust it. Please show me the way. Something shifted in that moment. It wasn't an instant answer or a miraculous solution, but an inexplicable peace washed over Anna. For the first time, she decided to stop trying to control everything on her own. She kept sending out resumes, but this time with the assurance that God was in charge. A few weeks later, she received an unexpected call from a company she had never considered. The offer wasn't just better financially, it aligned with her life's purpose. Anna realized that God had a bigger plan all along. She just needed to trust and wait for His timing. What can we learn? This story teaches us something profound about trusting in God's plan. When we try to control everything, we carry the burden alone. But when we hand over our fears, dreams, and frustrations to Him, we find rest. Not because we suddenly understand everything, but because we trust in who God is. God's timing is different. One of the biggest challenges in trusting God's plan is waiting on His timing. We want quick answers and immediate solutions. But God operates on a different schedule. He sees what we cannot see and works behind the scenes to align everything at the right moment. Remember the story of Joseph in the Bible? Sold into slavery by his own brothers, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. For years, Joseph must have wondered, God, why is this happening to me? Where is your plan? Yet, at the right time, God elevated him to a position of power in Egypt, where he saved countless lives, including his own family. If Joseph had given up on trusting, he would have never seen God's plan come to fruition. When we face delays, it's easy to think God has forgotten us. But remember, God's timing is never wrong. What feels like waiting to us is often a period of preparation. God doesn't just give us what we ask for. He gives us what we're ready to receive. Trusting without answers. Another challenge in trusting God's plan is dealing with silence. There are moments when it feels like God is distant, like our prayers are unheard. But these are the times when our faith is truly tested. Think of a teacher during an exam. The teacher remains silent while the students work through the questions. The silence doesn't mean absence. It means the teacher is watching, waiting for the students to complete their task. It's the same with God. In times of testing, He may seem quiet, but He's there, guiding us, strengthening us, and ready to reveal the next step. Letting go and trusting. Trusting in God's plan often requires letting go of what we think is essential. Sometimes we cling so tightly to our own plans that we forget to ask, God, what do you want for me? It's in these moments that he challenges us to loosen our grip and let him lead. Picture a child learning to ride a bike. At first, they hold onto the training wheels with all their strength. But to truly learn, they must trust the parent who's holding the bike from behind. That's how it is with God. He's holding our bike, guiding us, but we need to trust him enough to pedal. What does it mean to trust God's plan? Trusting in God's plan doesn't mean everything will be easy or that we'll always understand why things happen. It means believing that even in difficulties, God is working for our good. As Romans 8 verse 28 reminds us, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. It also means taking action. Trusting isn't about sitting back and waiting for everything to fall into place. It's about taking steps of faith even when the path ahead isn't clear. It's about continuing to pray, work, and seek while resting in the assurance that God is in control. And you? Now, think about it. What's that one area of your life where you're struggling to trust God? Maybe it's a relationship, a distant dream, or a situation that feels out of control. God's invitation to you today is simple. Trust me. Let go of the oars and let me lead. Tell him, Lord, I don't understand everything, but I choose to trust your plan. Help me let go of what I can't control and follow the steps you place before me. Remember, God never fails, and his plan for you is always greater and better than anything you can imagine. Keep walking even if the path seems dark, because God's light always shines at the end. And when you look back, you'll see how every twist and turn was part of something extraordinary he was building in your life. The Bible, a map for a life of faith. The Bible is like a map for navigating a life of faith. Reading the scriptures regularly helps us understand God's plans, his will, and the promises he has made for us. The Word of God doesn't just teach, it transforms. When we meditate on passages about God's faithfulness, our faith grows because we see clear examples of how he works in history and in the lives of others. Romans 10 verse 17 reminds us, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. The more we immerse ourselves in his Word, the more our faith is nourished. Community and relationships. Faith is also strengthened when we surround ourselves with a community of people who share the same values. Joining prayer groups, Bible studies, or simply sharing spiritual experiences with friends is essential. These relationships inspire us and help us grow because we see how God is working in the lives of others. A healthy community provides encouragement during tough times and celebrates with us when we see the fruits of faith. Mutual support is a tangible way to experience God's love in action. Action and perseverance. Cultivating faith isn't about passively waiting for it to grow. It requires action. This includes putting into practice what we learn in the Word, loving others, forgiving, and being generous. These actions strengthen our faith by connecting us directly with God's heart. Perseverance is also key. There will be times when our faith feels weak, especially during challenges or periods of silence. It's in those moments that we need to remain steadfast, even when we don't see immediate results. Like a farmer tending to the soil without knowing exactly when the harvest will come, persevering in faith ensures it will flourish in its time. Gratitude is another powerful way to cultivate faith. When we pause to acknowledge the blessings we've already received, we recognize how God has been at work in our lives. This gives us confidence that he will continue to work for our good. Take a moment at the end of each day to reflect on where you've seen God's hand at work. It could be something small, like a kind gesture, or something significant, like an answered prayer. This daily practice of reflection and gratitude strengthens your connection with God and nurtures your faith. Faith and action, two sides of the same coin. Faith and action are like two sides of the same coin. One cannot fully exist without the other. Sometimes we think having faith means waiting for God to do everything for us, but true faith inspires us to act. It's like planting a seed. You believe it will grow, but you still need to water it, care for it, and make sure it gets sunlight. Without action, faith is incomplete. The Bible makes this clear in James 2 verse 17. Faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. True faith is alive, dynamic, and moves us to do our part while trusting that God is doing his. Faith that moves mountains requires movement. Think about this. Jesus said that with faith as small as a mustard seed, we can move mountains. But to do so, we need to give the command, "Mountain, move from here to there." In other words, we must speak, believe, and act. God works in partnership with us. He provides strength, direction, and wisdom, but He expects us to take the first step. Imagine you have a dream, starting a business, returning to school, or building something meaningful in your life. Faith means believing God has given you the skills and resources to achieve it. But if you don't take action to bring that dream to life, it will remain just an idea. Faith gives you the courage to start, but actions make the vision a reality. A story of faith in action, Joao's journey. Let me tell you about Joao. He was a man of deep faith, but he spent much of his time waiting for things to fall into place. "God knows what I need," he would say, "so I'll wait for Him to open a door." But as the months passed, nothing changed. Joao became frustrated, thinking God wasn't listening. One day, a close friend said, "Joao, what if God has already placed an open door before you but is waiting for you to knock?" Those words changed Joao's perspective. He began actively seeking opportunities, sending out resumes, networking, and even enrolling in courses to improve his skills. Shortly after, he landed a job he never thought possible. That's when he realized God had been waiting for him to take action. Joao's story teaches us that faith doesn't mean waiting passively. It challenges us to rise, work, and make bold decisions. God won't do for us what He's already equipped us to do ourselves. Perseverance, faith in the waiting. Another critical aspect of the relationship between faith and action is perseverance. When we believe God is in control, we continue to act even when we don't see immediate results. Consider a farmer who plants seeds and tends the soil without seeing growth in the first days. He knows the growth is happening, even if it's invisible. Faith works the same way. It motivates us to keep going, even during moments of silence or stagnation. How often do we give up too soon? Perhaps we're just one step away from something extraordinary, but we lack perseverance. Faith gives us the strength to press on, trusting that God is working behind the scenes, even when we can't see it. Acting with God's guidance. Faith isn't just about doing anything, it's about acting in alignment with God's plan. This requires discernment. Sometimes we're so busy trying to make things happen that we forget to seek God's direction. When we pause to pray, meditate, and listen for His voice, our actions become more effective. Acting without consulting God is like driving without a map or GPS. You may be moving, but you don't know if you're heading in the right direction. Proverbs 16 verse 3 reminds us, "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans." When we place our actions in God's hands, He aligns our steps with His purposes. This doesn't mean the path will be easy, but it ensures we're on the right track. Facing challenges with action. What about when we're facing difficulties? Often, challenges paralyze us. We wait for a clear sign from God or for the circumstances to change before we take action. But faith calls us to move even when the way is uncertain. Remember Peter walking on water? He could only do it because he had the courage to step out of the boat. If he had waited for the storm to pass, he would have missed the miracle. Challenges aren't the time to stop, they're the time to trust God and act based on that trust. It's in this movement that God works. He multiplies our efforts and opens paths where we see none. Your next step. Now, think about your life. Is there something you've been avoiding doing, waiting for a sign? Perhaps God is already saying, "Stand up, take the first step, and I'll be with you." What door do you need to knock on today? Maybe it's starting a project, making an important call, or even asking someone for forgiveness. Don't forget to like this video and support the message. Your engagement helps us reach more people, sharing faith and encouragement to trust in God's promises. Your participation makes a difference. Faith is the fuel that drives your actions, and your actions, in turn, show God that you trust Him. So don't wait for perfect conditions. Take the next step, knowing that God is right there with you. Remember, faith opens the way, but your actions are what take you across it. Are you ready to move forward with confidence? Cultivating faith, a journey of trust. Faith, like a plant, needs to be nurtured. It doesn't appear out of nowhere or grow on its own. It requires care, dedication, and intention. Cultivating faith means investing time and energy to strengthen it, allowing it to become a transformative force in your life. This process takes time, but with consistent and conscious practices, it flourishes. Daily practices that nurture faith. Prayer as connection. Prayer is the cornerstone of cultivating faith. It's more than asking for help. It's a moment of connection, surrender, and intimacy with God. Through prayer, you share your fears, gratitude, and dreams, renewing your trust in Him. It doesn't have to be long or formal. What matters is that it's heartfelt and regular. Reflection and gratitude. And each day by reflecting on where you saw God at work. Maybe it was in a kind word, an unexpected solution, or the strength to face another day. Recognizing His presence builds your confidence in His faithfulness. Consistency, discipline in prayer, scripture reading, and fellowship creates a foundation that withstands life's challenges. Even 15 minutes a day can deepen your relationship with God, bringing peace and clarity. The fruits of faith. When you cultivate faith, you begin to notice profound changes in your life. Worry gives way to peace, discouragement transforms into hope, and fear is replaced by courage. Faith spills over into every aspect of your life, enriching your relationships, guiding your decisions, and giving you the strength to face obstacles. A final thought. Now that we've reached the end, let me ask you, do you see how trusting in God can completely change the way you face life? He never leaves you alone, and when you surrender your battles to Him, everything starts to make sense. But remember, this is just the beginning. In the upcoming videos, I'll share more about how God can